You're listening to Let's Talk Sustainable Business.
Hello, my name is Uwe Schulte, and it's a pleasure to welcome you back to our second series of our podcast, Let's Talk Sustainable Business. The series is brought to you by the Conference Board Global Sustainability Center. Today, I will be talking to Gail Schueller, Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer at 3M. First, let me introduce our guest, Gail Schueller, to you. Gail is responsible for 3M's sustainability strategy across the global 3M enterprise. These efforts span from healthcare and safety advances to vehicle electrifications and intelligent transportation. Gail started in 3M's corporate laboratory and has over 20 years of technical and business leadership experience. Gail's previous assignments include Direttore General and VP for 3M Mexico, VP R&D and Design for 3M's consumer business, and Gail has a PhD from the University of Virginia, a material science, and a bachelor in physics from the New York State University. Welcome, Gail. Please tell us a bit about yourself and your experiences in the world of science.
Thank you, Uwe. It's a pleasure to join you and the Sustainability Consortium. I've been involved with science since before I was born. My father was a high school chemistry teacher. He instilled that idea of science since I was a very small child. My mother also taught special education, which kind of gets to some of that impact drive that I think we in the sustainability space have. And every summer we would go camping and visiting places like national parks. So the whole science and sustainability bug hit me very early on in my life. I have gone on, as you mentioned. I was inspired by science during my classes as a school student, and then chose to major in physics and then go on to graduate school in material science as a PhD. Since then, I joined 3M. It's a very exciting science-based company, and as you mentioned, the diversity of the portfolio and the types of businesses that you can work with at 3M while applying science in so many different ways has been something that's really been exciting for me in the way that we can have an impact broadly around the world.
Yeah, I can hear that you're quite passionate about science and education. And, people might think that science in a corporation like 3M is mainly playing a role in, let's say, R&D, and it's something for specialists. But I think with the pandemic and also the climate crisis, we experience important input from science. How do you see the role of science in business?
That's a great question. And while you're definitely correct that there is an important and critical role for specialists and R&D scientists to be advancing specific scientific areas of expertise, whether it's from developing the right tape backing to addressing a global pandemic. The last year or so has been, I know the word unprecedented is overused at this point, but it is because it's an excellent word for this purpose. We're just seeing the importance of science being at levels that we've never seen before, and at personal levels, whether it's with the global pandemic or the way that you address safety associated with the pandemic, or global issues like climate change. 3M publishes an annual State of Science Index that in 2020, we actually did our research twice, looking at locations all around the world and getting feedback about people's perceptions about science. And I'm pleased to say that the perceptions of science around the world are increasing, recognizing the value, recognizing the importance to daily life, whether it's from being healthy and safe on a day-to-day basis or addressing the fundamental natural concerns we have related to sustainability. I think we're waking up to it more.
That's very encouraging. When you do this survey, are you doing this with your people or your consumers and customers? How do you do that?
Yeah, we have 13,000 people participating across 13 countries around the world. It is not, it would only be by chance that a 3Mer would be involved in this survey. It's really general population, and we're looking for insights. We have a scripted set of questions that we've been asking over the last 4 years so that we can calibrate and see improvements or negative effects, changes over time, as well as specific questions that we ask more about based on what a specific environment is. So in fact, in 2020, we actually conducted this survey twice because we started conducting it pre-pandemic and then needed to go back because we realized that some of the views that people had around science might be affected by that. And that's indeed what we found.
Now, this is great. And did you see any major differences between the different regions of the world?
There are many things that we've seen. There are some countries that have much higher confidence in science. Others have less. It's very interesting to look at on a country by country basis. In fact, this could be a really exciting separate podcast to go into specific details. There's a lot in there.
We have definitely to come back to that, but let's stay let's stay on focus here. I sometimes have that tendency to deviate, and
oh, it's great, and there's a million talking points and pieces of data that I could go into that I don't have right in front of me at the moment.
No, don't worry. It's just that I hope that my fellow patriots in Germany will feature highly on your score. We'll check that separately.
Awesome. Sounds great. No, and we'd be happy to do it.
Excellent. Now, you see, the pandemic obviously focused minds, but there are other things that have to concern a company, like, as I said, the climate crisis or the biodiversity loss, and they will influence business development. How do you see this from a corporate perspective?
Yeah, in fact, tying back to that State of Science Index, we definitely found that after the pandemic and health-related effects, the number 2 factor, even in the year of 2020, was that people were concerned about climate and biodiversity. So we know that companies and other organizations around the world have both a responsibility and an opportunity to do more in this space. We believe that collaborating together is really the way we make this happen, because companies can offer that ability to scale, they can support resources for innovation, and really it creates business models as well. So while there's challenges that are presented in these spaces, it's also, I believe very strongly that science is the way to help address these challenges. And so having a commercial mindset to how do you make that happen is a really important piece of it, because you can think of things time and time again. You mentioned early on, some of the electric vehicle enhancements. Those things come in response to major global challenges, but they also create business opportunities. The same goes for shifting from more materials-based solutions to more digital. So we believe that science is really a great way to address those challenges, and bringing forward, whether it's in the broader educational system or in corporate efforts, we believe that this is really a way to advance both what's needed from an impact perspective, but also create great business opportunities. And we're not alone. Investors are seeing more and more focus on a company's, they call it ESG, environmental, social, and governance practices, and how that connects with both what the track record is of a company and their commitments and current actions going forward. So there's a lot more to be done. And 3M, in fact, has committed to invest more than $1 billion over the next 20 years to help advance the investments that we have as a corporation.
That sounds impressive. I'm wondering how do you actually make sure within 3M that you stay on top of science? Because science is, of course, not something static. It develops itself. Yeah, we had warnings about climate change many years ago. Not a lot of people took it in the early stages very serious, but then more and more evidence came about, the scientific method, form a hypothesis, test it experimentally, and then verify that hypothesis and turn it into a theory. How do you make sure that advancement of science you stay on top of?
That's a great question. And I think you actually have two questions there, and I'd love to answer them both. Um, so the first one I heard was about, this science culture and staying current. And the second one I'm hearing woven in is about addressing climate change. So the first one, we have a long-standing culture around science that we've talked about. In fact, our technical forum is, I believe, celebrating close to its 70th birthday right now. For 70 years, we have had a group of technical employees who have engaged to discuss science, and it's very organic. So we have approximately 10,000 members around the world, as well as about 1,000 events per year. Now, some of them are really big, like our annual event, which was virtual this year, or some of them can be small, where maybe that's 10 specific subject matter experts are meeting on a topic of interest, which might be, next generation solar energy, or might be advancing types of abrasives, or might be something related to electric vehicle charging technologies. And so that group helps guide where we're going from a scientific perspective and create this organic approach with our 15% culture, where you can spend up to 15% of your time working on things that you're passionate about. We have 51 different technology platforms that are mixed and matched to create different solutions for the enterprise. And I could go on and on talking about some of those. Who knew that traffic signage solutions from the 1950s could lay the pathway for dental amalgams that help teeth look and feel like natural teeth. So the idea is that by the scientific community coming together, staying aware of what's going on in megatrends, bringing together different technology platforms, evolving those technology platforms, it's a really key place in how we stay advancing. We also have governance and management systems ranging from our technical council to our corporate technical operating committee that help guide these things. So we have a really robust system on how we stay advancing on the technology. Now, within that, I mentioned this technical forum. One example of ways that we stay current is that we have a technical forum chapter that we've had for a few years now that is our climate chapter, very much focused on all things climate. They publish a 101 and 201 and maybe even 301 classes for people around the company of all backgrounds that can take to stay abreast of what's happening in the science. Also, this year, in January of 2021, we established a Science for Circular chapter. So really advancing what's happening in terms of a global circular economy and how we can make materials stay in play for the longest amount of time. When it comes to goals and really staying advanced on those goals, we take a math with a path type of approach. And so as a scientific body, it's really important for us to make sure that we understand when we set an ambitious goal, what exactly is our math to get there, and what key programs, what are the key investments, and what impact do they have? So earlier this year, we announced a set of new environmental goals designed to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, while reducing our footprint 50% in the next 10 years, reducing our water use 25% in our facilities over the next 10 years, and returning higher quality water to the environment after use in manufacturing. Just last week, we announced our commitment to reduce the use of virgin fossil-based plastics by 125 million pounds within 5 years. And all of those are developed with this math with a path type of approach.
Let me just first of all, I was very tempted to go off on another tangent when you talked about caring for teeth based on signage for traffic. But I think
I would be happy to go there, but maybe that's off path for today.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not. But let's stay with your targets for a second, because that's very interesting, and saying that it's mathematically founded. So let's stay for a second, and after that, I would like to come back to circular again, because I get always very excited about that. But let's stay on climate. So climate neutrality by 2050. That's a very ambitious target, as we've seen that countries are struggling to actually agree on it. Even so, we have a new boost of initiatives now, which is, of course, very, very exciting as well. But How do you see that? Have you defined steps how to get there over time?
Absolutely. That's been the core. And that's the reason it took us longer than perhaps some of us would have liked to come out with a carbon neutrality goal. We've mapped all of our facilities on a global basis to understand what the impacts are for any given facility. We've also gone across our key, what we call value chains in the enterprise. So maybe tape manufacturing would be for 3M, one of those areas, or adhesives coatings, things like that would be examples of value streams. And so they might cross many businesses or many different locations. So when we go by facility, we map out where our footprint is, whether it's from greenhouse gas emissions or energy usage or even things like water or waste. And then we understand where that we can make the biggest impact the fastest. We also overlay that with where the existing technologies, known technologies are, as well as ones that are emerging quickly that we believe we have high confidence in. And we only use those that are primarily based on existing technologies plus a reasonable estimate of those that are emerging that we think have high confidence. And so we go through project by project, going after specific facilities, specific processes, and specific facilities. And so mapping that math with a path to carbon neutrality was a major effort, and one that I'm really proud of the team and how they've pulled it together. So we've done that layout, looking at what projects need to be done in 2020, what projects need to be done in 2021, 22, and so on, in order to get to that neutrality point by 2050. But perhaps even more inspiring is to get to a 50% reduction in our carbon emissions by 2030. And in doing so, we have specific projects, specific capital investments that must be done. And we look at what the cost is, what the technology confidence is, the number of resources applied, and when it needs to happen in order to meet that goal. With a global manufacturing company, we are largely based on that manufacturing footprint. That's where we see our own operational footprint being highest, is in our manufacturing sites. And many times that equipment is something that you purchase and lasts a long time, decades even. And so it's critical that we get ahead of this from early on and that we take those most important equipment steps at the right times. So when equipment is either being revamped for maintenance reasons, or as new products are coming on and we're adding new capabilities or new equipment, that's the time to make those key changes. And then in parallel with that, we're doing things with that value chain mapping as well. How can we go about making our adhesives the lowest footprint possible? How can we go about choosing the right backings for tapes or films that have the best carbon footprints? And that's a really important part of what we're doing.
Understood. Now let's get back to the circular one, because that's something that I think is extremely important. We've just published a report on the challenges of solid plastic waste recycling and how far behind we are against the ambition to really recycle everything. But recycling is not everything, because circular really means that we continue use the same resource over and over again. And you call it science for circular. Can you explain this maybe in an example where you apply that and how you apply that?
Sure. So we have a strategic sustainability framework that we work under, and you've referenced it. It's all based on our ambition to apply science to improve lives. It gets to our vision statement. It's core to who we are. We know we're science-based, and we know our global breadth and the areas we touch gives us the opportunity to have that global reach and touch people, improve lives all around the world. That strategic sustainability framework has 3 pillars: science for circular, science for climate, and science for community. We've talked a bit about science for climate. Let's talk a little bit more about science for circular. Our overall guiding ambition on this is about designing ambitions that do more, our overall ambition around science for circular is to design solutions that do more with less material, advancing a global circular economy. This is something that neither 3M nor any other company does on their own. This has to be done in collaboration, perhaps more than anything else that we do. We have put in place a sustainability value commitment that helps bring this to life. This is a requirement that every new product we develop must advance a global good. So in the case of circularity, this might be, for example, where we take Scotch-Brite sponges. They're made from recycled plastics, recycled content. There are other examples where we take adhesives that are made from plant-based materials. We always make sure in those cases to do a life cycle analysis to make sure that the carbon footprint makes sense. But we can use plant-based materials, we can use recycled content, and we can always design to do more with less material, what we call decontenting. So those are all really important pieces of both the circular economy and the work that we do to have our new reduction of plastics goal. So those come together, and the commitment around reducing the dependence on virgin fossil-based plastics by 125 million pounds within 5 years is leveraging all of those pieces: recycled content, plant-based materials, and using less materials. It's across our products with the Scotch-Brite example I provided, as well as across our packaging.
I just have to work that out for a lot of our audience doesn't work with pounds. So say it again. How many pounds?
125 million pounds.
So that's 125,000 tons. Yeah. 65,000 tons. Then. Yeah. Is that correct?
That sounds roughly correct, but I would check that math. And that is pretty U.S.-centric of me to state it that way. We'll have to work on that one.
Don't worry about it. And no, it's. I think the most important one is, of course, to put that in relation with the total usage that you have got. But let's not. Sorry.
You might be interested to know that the 125 million pounds is roughly equivalent to 5.5 Eiffel Towers by weight.
Yeah, that sounds then roughly right. Yeah, in terms of the tons.
Yeah. Okay.
But to be very honest with you, I haven't been in Paris for a while now, so I don't know how much the Eiffel Tower weighs these days. Anyway, okay. So you just whetted my appetite again with something you introduced, and that was the Science for Social. Can you? I haven't seen that on your website, so I'm ignorant about that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So with our strategic sustainability framework, we developed this about 2.5 years ago, bringing together just a dream team of leaders across the company representing every function, every business, every geography. And we knew that science needed to be at the root. But what we were trying to determine is what were the right pillars to have within our strategic framework. And climate was the one that jumped out first because that was very clear. Then we knew we needed to have a materials piece. So that got to the science for circular. We really liked that we had 2 C's. So our third pillar is really around science for community. And the community portion is, yes, how our products help people's lives, reducing healthcare acquired infections, helping people be safe in the event of a global pandemic or other types of safety issues, et cetera. But it's also about how we engage in our communities, how we promote and advance STEM education, how we help ensure equity for people with all types of underrepresented backgrounds, whether it's in our own workforce or in the communities where we work and play, helping make sure that there is a world where we all really want to be living. We think that these 3 pillars of our strategic sustainability framework really align well with the UN SDGs and other major global approaches to sustainability and ESG.
I get it. The question that arises, of course, there are the community effects you have with your products, but there are also, of course, the effects you have on communities by operating there. Does that extend to that as well?
Absolutely. So this gets to programs where we have like 3M Impact, where we have skills-based volunteerism all over the world, where 3Mers are spending time in the communities to partner with different NGOs on critical issues that bring the expertise, not just a pair of hands, but in addition to a pair of hands, the expertise that someone may have either as a scientist or a designer or a business leader, where they can really help that NGO advance. And we have some wonderful examples of that. Additionally, it gets to some of our sustainability goals around things like engaging where we have facilities in water stressed and water scarce areas. We actually have a very small fraction of our facilities in those locations, so that's good planning, I would say, up front. But where we do, we make sure that we have special engagement with those communities to make sure that we're doing the right thing from a water stewardship perspective and partnering with them on their greatest needs. We make a point to, when we're hiring, to have that balanced diversity. We have diversity goals around enhancing the diversity of our global workforce, as well as goals around in the United States, improving the racial diversity specifically, and really bringing through school programs, STEM programs in the schools all around the world. We have active programs like our Visiting Wizards program, where scientists visit schools. We're looking forward to getting that started in a face-to-face section once we get past the global pandemic. But we've also done a Science at Home program, which is accessible online to people all over the world, where you can see individual science experiments practiced by individual scientists and designed to help students expand their scientific curiosity or classrooms work in new ways around the world. So there's a lot going on.
I think that is something that's very much needed. We talked a lot about science, but that education part is so important. It benefits you with your recruits, but I think what I'm hearing you say is you make sure that you give that back as well. That will benefit you eventually again by better educated recruits, but it also gives back to society. That's what I'm hearing you say. Yeah.
Absolutely. And even at the bigger sense, if we're going to successfully address these global challenges, whether they're health related or environmentally related, science is going to be at the core of that. So the more great minds who are inspired to work on scientific challenges, the better it will be for all of us.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important learning. And we started by saying that the pandemic has highlighted that. And I think we all noticed that when people started applying science, then we were actually able to fight the pandemic in quite an impressive speed. And in parts of the world where science was ignored, and I used to live in Brazil for a while. I'm devastated by seeing what's going on there, and I very much hope that we will be able to fight together by supporting both the Brazilian people and also the Indian people who are now most hit at this point in time. So applying science there is the way forward to fight that dreadful situation. I would very like to very briefly come back to your point about collaboration, because this is such an important point, that companies in applying science and driving sustainability cannot do this on their own. And you mentioned it. So how do you go about that? How do you approach others to join into the effort?
Yeah, that's a great question, because absolutely no single company, no single NGO, no single government at any level around the world can address these challenges completely by themselves. It just is impossible. When it's within our products, we work closely with both our customers to design in solutions that really help address footprint and address impact for society, but also with our suppliers. We have a supplier responsibility policy, and we have our supplier sustainability solutions library that we use to reinvent products. So those are ways that we do within, I would say, our product portfolio. Other ways that collaboration is critical is working with governments on what are the key regulations that need to come into place. How do we ensure that they're truly science-based and not just a political artifact? then it gets to how do you bring everyone along? One of the things that we've done in the last year that I'm really excited about is a partnership with the United Nations Global Compact on the SDG ambition. So that's the Sustainable Development Goals Ambition Program, really aimed at helping companies, big, small, medium enterprise, help them make sure that sustainability principles are brought into their core business values and strategies for their business. It's one thing for companies like 3M and our large suppliers and our large customers to be doing things, but really getting it across the whole portfolio of the business world and aligned with what society and governments are wanting is really where we need to get to. And so, we're eager to take an important role in that at individual and collective levels.
Thank you, Gail. We're coming to an end of this episode, and I would like to thank you really for making the case for science in business and sharing your experiences there with us. And we were only able to touch briefly on your collaboration with suppliers and the value chains, and I would like to explore that a little bit more in the next episode. And with that, thank you so much for now.
Thank you, Yuga. It's a pleasure to join you, and I'll look forward to continuing our discussion.
Thank you. To our audience, if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to our podcast series or explore the entire catalog of podcast programming from the Conference Board by visiting our website at tcb.org/podcasts. You can also write to us at sustainability@tcb.org. Today, I would like to thank you for listening, and please join us again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you and goodbye.
That was Let's Talk Sustainable Business.